Yay! Okay, I'm live. Hello, everybody. How are you doing? It's so good to be here with you today. That I am really excited for my hair got stuck on my lip gloss. I'm really excited for today's topic. It kind of represents a lot of the foundation of how I approach my alchemical work and my spiritual path. It's really a huge piece that's shaped me and influenced me in really profound ways. And that is the connection to the natural world, the natural, primal, sometimes horrifying, earthly reality that we're a part of in this particular space and time. So a lot of spiritual paths tend to kind of veer away from that because of how we've been conditioned by so much of the kind of Abrahamic philosophy of nature as being something that is kind of just like a byproduct or a backdrop for our human excellency to play inside of. And it really couldn't be further from the truth. So I want to kind of dive in a little bit to some pieces today around what this path truly represents, how I came onto it, and why it's so important if you want to actually do big work in this world. It's actually hugely necessary. There is no bypassing it. You could go play with your little sky god all you want, but at the end of the day, he's not going to save you from the horrors of this world. And until you are willing to face them, you're going to be kind of at the mercy of them. And that's really what's a huge problem in so much of like the lineage of that spiritual thought and the spiritual belief of being above nature is we end up looping in these patterns in these primal kind of like our leg is in the trap and we have to chew it off multiple times because we're not willing to embrace the truth of how our animal nature is influencing things, how we're actually the ones that are driving ourselves to the ground because we are unwilling to actually even conceptualize or relate to that framework as a whole. And it's really easy to just kind of put yourself in this position where you don't at all. Hold on 1 second. One moment. Let me just turn this off. Where we don't at all even realize like how much of the reality of things we're avoiding or unwilling to even recognize. And I feel like I had a really large advantage in coming into the primal on my own spiritual path because I actually wasn't in the spiritual dimensions until I was around 16 years old. It was not something I believed in. It was not something I entertained. I was fully rooted in the natural world. My grandfather was a biologist, and I took a lot of his ideology into being. And my dad was a fundamentalist Muslim, and I was like, that's not my path. So I'm just going to go over here to science and nature because it feels a lot better to me than whatever this is. Which, no disrespect to anyone who follows that path, it just wasn't for me. It wasn't for my personal experience of divinity, and very oppressive of my experience of divinity. But that being said, because of that, I had such a strong rooting and profound relationship to nature and the physical world, in logic, in the logical, schematic systems of things and how important that is. And those kind of people who live in that place of I'm not going to believe it unless I see it. I was there for a while until I had a spiritual experience that awoke in me to the deeper intangible realities that surrounded me in a very impossible to deny way. I'm not going to get into it because it's kind of personal what happened for me. Yeah. And so I will just say that having that as my background, it really brought me to relate to the spiritual in a much different way because I was coming from a place where I was so deeply connected to the material physicality of things. I always loved science. I loved the connection of life and animals. I could sit outside and observe nature for hours upon hours and feel completely fulfilled. So coming from that place, being rooted in that place and opening to the spiritual dimension, it brought me to have this kind of like stepping stone in my path into the actual interlap between the natural world and the spiritual realm, in the body, in the actual ecology of things and beyond. And that's so much of what I base my path and my alchemical processes around, is getting you in touch with that deeper natural foundation that's going to help you cut through all of the kind of mental, spiritual, emotional bypassing that you've allowed yourself to do because you're seeing something so clear. And this is where it kind of segues into the idea of power. Because if you look at power in the animal kingdom, and I know we're talking about spiritual power, but if you're looking at power in the animal kingdom, power is something that doesn't come easy. We'll just say that it doesn't come easy. It's not meant to be easy. It's something that is intended to kind of challenge your capacity, your instincts, your abilities, all of those things. But in the spiritual world, we tend to have this idea that power is this easy thing that we're just born with because we're beings of the spiritual realms. And so power is just granted to us because it's inside of us somewhere. And yet that's not actually how it works. And a lot of very powerful, very spiritually powerful people live in very spiritually or physically impoverished states of mind because they're unwilling to take an actual comprehensive look at where they're not allowing themselves to play the game of what it means to be an animal, what it means to be a human, what it means to be this physical creature, what it means to abide by these laws of reality. And we're so far removed from it, especially in the spiritual world, because we have all of these like grandiose, oh, I come from this galaxy, or I come from this plane. I'm the past life reincarnation of Cleopatra. So naturally, my innate beingness is enough to get me something in this world, to let me birth my empire and to let me build my little castle in the sky. But it never works like that. And the more you hang on to the illusion of your specialness as granting you something, the longer it's going to take for you to actually create your power in this world, or your magnificence in this world. Going back to the idea of power is something that you actually have to protect. If you look at the animal kingdom, all animals that exist in a state of power and dominance, they don't exist like that in isolation. They exist in contendence, I don't know the contending word, with other creatures of power. They have to be in that state where they can guard their power in order to exist and operate in that plane. I like to look at big predators as my kind of archetypal role models because of what they stand for on a natural level. They stand for power. They stand for the protective capacity. They stand for strength and natural genius in regards to dominance and in regards to authority and command. So I like to look at them and kind of model my sense of how do I need to grow based on the way that they operate. And again, we have such a bad idea of predators. I spent such a huge amount of time in the early parts of my transformational work, just kind of trying to shift the tonality and the tonality. Sorry, words today. I was literally did not get much sleep last night, but I'm excited to talk about this, so I don't care that my words are all over the place. But the tone of the word predator, it's something that comes with such this loaded, like exploitative connotation. And I spent a really long time trying to shift that by actually offering masterminds related to the predator, related to like taking back that word and claiming its health, its purity, its vitality in the nature of the ecosystem and the nature of what it means to operate in alignment to that role. But if you look at big predators aren't just like, oh, I'm in my little world and I'm just doing my thing and nothing ever bothers me because I'm so powerful. big predators constantly have to protect their throne. If they're a dominant male, they have to make sure the lesser males, they constantly are trying to steal their role. They have to guard against that. They have to have power to guard against that. They have to have the ability to protect their throne. And that's a part of power that many spiritual people just bypass. They're like, oh, I'm a power in isolation. No, there's a lot of power in this realm. And if you want to stand for something, you're going to have to stand against someone, something, some corporation, whatever it is. And if you're not able to protect yourself, if you're not ready to stand for yourself in relationship to that other force, you're just going to hold yourself back. You're going to kind of like keep yourself stagnant because some part of you recognizes that they're going to actually annihilate you, and it is life or death. Again, the spiritual reality people, they love the idea of just like everything's wonderful and allowed and good. And it is, on a like a really stretched out eternal level, everything's good. We're good. And we die a lot. We reincarnate. Everything's good. We get tortured, we raped, brutally like mauled. Everything's good because we're a soul. And that's true. That's very true. But when we're living in these personal realities and here and now in this body, in this time, there is a matter of stakes that we have to take into account, that on some subconscious level, we are taking into account. And if we're not actually consciously addressing those stakes and the possibility of what they represent, we're just going to hold ourselves back because it is life or death at a certain point. It isn't just this kumbaya of celebration. There are forces that don't work in our favor, that actively try to oppress us, that don't want what we have to offer. And if we're not anchored to the primal reality of that, we're not going to be ready to face it, and we're going to collapse under the weight of our growth. We're going to actually sabotage ourselves because, again, on some primal level, we recognize we can't face those foes. We don't have the power. Like, if you want to exist as a butterfly, exist as a pretty little butterfly. But don't put yourself in the den of lions because you're not going to hold up against that. Look at my little lion came in the back right there. But you're not going to hold up. And you know that. You can exist in this state of whimsical innocence, but if you want to play in the realm of power, you're going to have to understand what it takes to face those threats that exist, very real threats, just the same as I can go look out at a body of water and be like, wow, I'm really thirsty. That water is really inviting. But if I happen to be in the middle of a African savanna and I'm really thirsty and I want some water, I can't just, I'm just going to go walk into the water and put myself in and just savor all of the spiritual lusciousness of what water represents to me. Because in like about 5 seconds or so, I'm going to be snatched up by a crocodile. No matter how much I'm like, I spiritually command power of whoever I'm commanding, I'm still going to get eaten. I'm still going to get attacked. It doesn't matter what I'm spiritually calling upon, because there is a primal reality that exists in the immediacy of what I'm playing that oversees or oversees, again, words this morning are not not coming easily. Oversees, supersedes the spiritual. And if my identity is just in this place of like, oh, I'm this spiritual being and everything works in my favor, but I'm existing in this primal body and neglecting all of these pieces around me, the crocodiles, the lions, the parasites, the threats of life that exist in more than just the natural world itself, but in the actual like nature of the politics of life, then I'm going to feel a little bit disempowered. I'm going to feel a little bit underdeveloped, no matter how much spiritual power I'm channeling, no matter how special I think I am, no matter how any of those things, because I've existed on both sides. I've existed in a place where I was just like, I'm spiritually taken care of. I have to worry about nothing. And I'm just going to throw myself into life because I am a goddess. So obviously it's going to work out for me. And you know what? It worked out for me, but by way of teaching me about brutality, which wasn't always fun. And if I can warn you in advance, I think that's a little better than surrendering yourself to every single crocodile in the world, because it's not fun to have to be initiated by these fires. It's necessary sometimes. In order to truly grasp something, we kind of have to know the stakes. But there are times and places where you can actually learn more in depth the nature of things and receive that kind of gnosis without having to put yourself in those places, in those positions. And I really find a lot of joy in getting to the bottom, the little roots of things in that way. It really, really drives me and inspires me in so many facets and aspects of the way that I work and guide people through these dimensions, because truly, at the end of the day, like I said, it doesn't matter what spiritual power you're channeling if you're not actually anchoring it to this world and this reality and this dimension. Even when it comes to like the aspect of authority, of getting your business to a certain place, getting your position in the industry to a certain place, standing as a leader or a luminary, all of those things, they take an understanding that we are not just driven by these high moral values of good and love as much as we would like to believe we are. We're not. So knowing that, what is it going to take to protect yourself? What is it going to take to create this really solid foundation for yourself? And when I say protect yourself, it's never like this anxious, I have to constantly be on guard, I have to constantly be analyzing my threats. It's none of that, because even though we come from the animal world, we actually have this capacity to kind of merge the animal world with the divine world. And what that looks like is you kind of anchor to the principles of the animal world, but you exist in relation to them from a divine place. So when it comes to protection, you're not going to be like the chimpanzee who's always like scanning every threat of like, is this person going to take my throne? Is that person going to take my throne? You're going to acknowledge that those things exist, those threats exist, but you're not going to always be on guard, because that would be draining. And we want to kind of extend beyond just of our animal nature. That's actually really, really important to our sense of sanity in the grand scheme of things. So you want to be in this balance of, I'm aware of the threats, but I'm also really relaxed, because I know I've got this. I'm good. Like, I know who I am. I can die a million times and that's okay. Like, I'm good. But I'm still gonna actually, if this threat comes into my field, I'm going to address it. I'm going to do it swiftly, and I'm going to put it in its place, because I don't let weeds expand. I don't let them take over, because that would lead to a very unfulfilling field in my life. I don't want to be dealing with these like, sneaky creatures that come in and they spawn and they start to take over and infiltrate your sense of self. I don't want to deal with that. So I'm going to be aware that they exist at whatever scale, whether it's a full-fledged, beat down crocodile to crocodile, this is my territory, motherfucker, or it's like a little parasite getting in the water. It's coming in, it's trying to infiltrate. I'm going to be aware of that. These little signals that are constantly communicating to us, whether it's towards health or entropy. And we have to be aware of those things. And we have to actually look at it from this perspective that's, people are good, but not all behaviors are good. Not all attitudes are good. And I can still honor the goodness of this person while saying I don't tolerate that attitude in my life, in my space, in my field. It's the health and vitality that allows me to relax. If I were to be completely ignorant to that, I would have to be on guard all the time. But the more awareness you can anchor to the primal dimension, the more you can kind of let go, because you see things, you see the patterns, you see the cycles, you see the little signals that communicate, I'm challenging you, I'm challenging your space, I'm challenging your role, and you can address it however you desire to address it. And it doesn't need to be this big standoff. It can be as simple as like detachment and letting go and allowing that energy out. It's understanding that if you don't take care of this space around you, the space of your life, it's going to get overrun. Just like if you don't take care of a property, you go there in a couple of months, all of these bugs, creatures, animals, the wild has taken root. It's just the nature of things. We either protect and preserve, or the wild overtakes. And it's always going to be that way. We can act like, oh, I just want this to be simple and easy, and I don't want to think about it. Okay, well then be a butterfly. Go exist in your fluffy beauty. But don't talk about power. Don't try to play with power, because you can get burned really badly. And it's like, you can just neglect and ignore this primal reality. You can, if you want to just live out in nature in your new earth paradise and kind of study the flow of the wind and surrender to it. But you want to actually live in a state of power, you're going to have to be attuned to the actual politics of power, the primal reality of power, on whatever level, in whatever way, in whatever scale. It's not just about power over, it's about power within, the power to command, whether it's prosperity, whether it's influence, whether it's this stream of thought, philosophy that you're trying to lead and illuminate forward. Whatever it is, if you want to take it to that level, you have to understand you're entering a place of power where you're going to have to protect something. And again, I never say protect from a place of like, you need to like constantly be on guard, like the anxious style of protection. I'm saying protect, like you just need to be aware of your power. You need to be aware of the threats. You need to be aware of the territory. Just like you can't wander into a river in Africa without being aware that something's going to eat you alive. You just can't. You can't spiritually bypass it. It's just the reality. You feel that. And when you're in that presence, I promise you, you'll feel it, because he's radiating that dominance. That crocodile's in that water and you feel him. You feel him and you respect him. You don't even have to know, like, oh, I just know the geography and the ecology of Africa, therefore I know there's crocodiles. You will feel him, I promise. Just the same, I was with friends and we were hiking in Arizona, and we're both really sensitive to these primal dimensions, Jin, and we came across this rattlesnake den, and we could feel it. And it was a very primal communication, like, here's my space, here's your space. Okay, cool. Let's honor that, because I'm not looking to get in a tussle with a rattlesnake right now. So I'm going to honor your space. And really understanding, like, there's just a reality to power that is always going to come with these threats. It's never going to be like, oh, you are the new earth leader. Here, magic, here's like your path. We're going to lay out the red carpet and the golden lights and the carriages, and we're just going to take you to the top. It'd be nice if it could work like that, surely, but we wouldn't be prepared. We would lose it really fast, because again, you have to be ready for power. You have to be able to hold it. You have to be aware of what it's going to require and what you need to protect in order to stand in alignment with it. And when you are aware of those things, it moves so seamlessly, and you can really rise into what it means to be this like powerful being of life. And there's just something about it that I love. I've always loved the nature of like sex and death, and I think it's the perfect emblem of nature itself, is just that sex and death cycle. You're either dying, killing something, or reproducing. It really is that simple, but we completely disconnect ourselves from that a lot of times on the spiritual path, because that reality is something really, really, what's the word? It's just got like this rawness, this intensity to it that can feel really scary for someone who's not anchored to this world. But yeah, it's a beautiful, this I'm wearing, like I wear animals all the time. I model myself after animals. They are my gods among other gods. They are my gods, and I long to be in communion with them at a very deep level. Animals, life, nature. There's a lot to talk about this, and I'm going to be talking about it a little more. I just wanted to kind of touch upon these points just today to get into this space. I'm going to see if I have any comments. Anybody who wanted to talk about this or ask any questions. Oh, hi, Caroline. Oh, it's so good to see you. You're so nice. Oh, and William. Oh my gosh. And Sarah. Oh, lovely. I'm so glad you guys could be here. You're so lovely. So beautiful. I have to tell you, my inspirations are aquatic predators. So great white sharks, megalodons, crocodiles. Those are my bread and butter. That's who I'm gonna be in this world. I'm gonna be an aquatic predator. And I love predators. I love what they represent to the ecosystem. I love what they are at their core. They scare me and entice me. I go to this lake by my house a lot, and I just sit and I communicate to this alligator. And he'll rise and he'll come out of the water and he'll see me and he'll like give me this look, and I kind of like give him this like flirty energy, like, hi, I love you. And then he'll get like a little bit closer. And it's so fun to me because, you know, we see them for their power a lot of the times, but there is actually an innocence to predators and to how they operate that can tell us a lot about our own nature and our own capacity as beings to exist in these states. And but yeah, I talked to him. He's adorable, and I just love everything he represents. He goes under and he looks up and he's like in this like reptilian, creepy stalker face, and I'm just like, I'm so in love with you. You're my best friend. Teach me everything. I would do everything to get in the water and just swim with you. I know that's not something we can do, but I'm gonna act like it because you're the cutest thing I've ever seen. And he's my friend. I have little babies there too that I talk to a lot, but this is kind of besides the point. I'm just sharing about how much I love aquatic predators. And in the future, as my work evolves, it's really my intention to do a lot more conservation work for the wild and for the animals and for nature, conservation and awareness. And I understand that my path to that place is one that requires a level of strength and tenacity in order to stand for them. But because I stand for them, they stand through me. And that's the ultimate beauty of this path and what it ends up becoming about and representing. The more you can kind of anchor to these principles, the more they can prop you up to stand for what it is you're actually here to stand for. The more you try to bypass them and deny them and pretend like they're not there, the more they're going to like creep up on you and put you in your place, because you can't live in this world without honoring this matrix. It just doesn't work. You can pretend for however many years you want to pretend, but it's going to take you nowhere. All right, that was my little live stream today. Thank you guys for being here so much. It was so much fun. I'm going to the recording studio now. Bye. I'll talk soon. Much love.